Good morning. I'm going to call the meeting to order. First, I will read the land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that the ground on which we live is the traditional territory of Caldwell First Nation, of the Three Fires Confederacy, and the original people of Point Pelee and Pelee Island and its surrounding lands and waters, and that of the Huron-Wendat and Wyandot peoples. We recognize and respect the First Nations who are stewards of the land and waters of Turtle Island and who have embraced the stewardship since time immemorial. We would also like to acknowledge the contributions of other nearby First Nations, communities, and all original people across Turtle Island. Okay, is there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general natures thereof? No one online? Okay. Can I get adoption of minutes, please? Okay, Councillor Burns. Thank you. And then we will move on to D. So items for consideration. So number 1, Parks Playground Construction 2024. I will then call Mark Beggs, Manager of Parks and Roads, will present the report. Please.
Good morning to the committee. Thank you for having us today. The report that's before you today is about the parks construction for 2024. The budget for these projects was approved as part of the budget deliberations this year. And we have 4 parks that are scheduled for an upgrade to the playground equipment. The 4 parks that we're going to do this year are Lafferty Park, Natalie Park, River Villa Park, and the park that's on Mio Boulevard that is still to be named. So today we have 2 of our contractors here that are going to do presentations for us and go through a little bit of the accessibility components of the playgrounds and talk about them a little bit and available for questions. Just to clarify, this report is not to approve the construction of them, as it is already approved in the budget. These are the contractors that are doing the work. It's more of an opportunity for the committee to hear about what we are doing, ask any questions that might come up. And we obviously haven't started the construction, so if there was some little tweak that we wanted to work on, we could probably still incorporate that. But it is not to approve the entire construction of the parks. That is, it's already approved and going to happen. So with that, is it okay if I pass it off to our contractor? I believe, Mark, you're going to start first. And Mark's going to go through his presentation. So Mark's company is New World Playgrounds. They have one of the projects, and Paul from Henderson has the rest of the projects as per the RFP documents and who was successful on the bids. Okay.
All right, Mark, if you can come to the table and present. Sorry, Mark, can you please state your name and where you're from, please? And turn on the mic by pressing the button, please.
Okay, it's Mark Jones, New World Park Solutions. We got the River Villa Park, which is it's a smaller neighborhood park. It was a smaller budget. So with smaller budgets like this, the one thing you want to do is go after the main thing, which children play on the most, which is obviously swings. So we have a 2-bay swing set there. In the swing set, you'll have 2 belt seats, a toddler seat, and then you have an accessible swing seat, so everybody can play on the swings. That's the most important part of a playground for children. They seem to really go to that, and that was part of the tender as well. They wanted 2 bays. On top of that, they specified they wanted a small structure for the little ones with a slide, and then climbing apparatus with ropes. Because of the budget, we couldn't go large, but we went with some of our most popular items. On the small playground, there is a transfer station that gets you up to the 2nd deck. On the deck, we put a telescope. It's not a real telescope, but you can still see through it and look around, and it's an accessible one, so it's been lowered a little bit. A slide and a climber, and then ground level, there's an accessible steering wheel. Then when you go to the senior area, we have 2 different types of rope climbers, and what we did with those is I put The bases I put like seats, so children can sit there. If they can't climb, at least they can be around the area and be with other ones. And then the ropes, I brought the ropes all the way down to the bottom, so some children that can't reach up or get high can still play with the bottom ropes, and then children that have a little bit more flexibility and strength, they can climb up to the higher levels. And that's it.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there any questions, or did you want to say something?
I just wanted to add one thing I should have said at the beginning. All the playgrounds that we're installing this year are, the base of them is the engineered wood fiber base. So none of them are being built with the rubber play base. And from an accessibility perspective, the engineered wood fiber is, a lot of times we have questions about, is it accessible? And it is accessible. It's something really important to remember. A big reason why we have gone with that on all these parks is the cost. The cost of the rubber base is significantly more. And also we've found with maintenance and replacement over the years that we've been doing this a little bit, our rubber play bases, while they are really nice, especially at the beginning, they do often require repairs. The lifespan on them is limited, and it sometimes doesn't match up with when the playground is going to be replaced. So especially on our smaller parks and playgrounds that we install, the engineered wood fiber is the preferred method for our operations.
Thank you. I will open it up for questions or comments from our committee. Mr. Burns?
I guess to administration, it's nice to have the playground equipment, but are we going to have any park benches? Because I'm sure there's more than one child, could be young. What does the mother do to sit to read a book or something? I don't know if that's in our budget or what's planned besides that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question. And a lot of times we don't include the benches with the playground install, but as part of our memorial bench program that we currently do, we are starting to install benches without memorial plaques so that they're available to purchase. And we are getting in the habit of, every time we build a new park, we install at least one bench or a table with an umbrella or different things like that. So that's what you've seen at some of the newer parks that have been built. And going forward, that is a piece that we're going to include with each playground.
Thank you very much.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, seeing none then. Thanks, Mark, for your presentation. Pleasure. And we will move on to Paul Windle from Henderson Play Equipment, please.
Good morning. There we go. My name is Paul Windle. I'm with Henderson Recreation Equipment. We will be looking after Mayo Lafferty and Natalie Parks. So let me just get my proper papers here so I have the right park here. So there we go. So this is Natalie Park. If you could go to the first one, just the plain site plan. We were tasked with creating a playground that would be considered accessible for the projects. In the Canadian Standards Association, there's a voluntary piece in the back of it called Annex H. The reason they put that in there is that your idea of what is accessible, mine, another person's idea could be completely different. So what they wanted to do is create a formula on what is considered an accessible structure for all people with limited mobilities. So with that, they would take a project and say, you have so many elevated components, therefore you need so many on it, what's considered an accessible route. Someone who has limited mobility, not necessarily a wheelchair, can they get to certain things? So there's a formula that they come up with that, a formula for how many ground level play items and how many types of ground level play, so that you don't just have a wall of steering wheel panels, things like that. So with this project, we have the senior structure. We have the swing set spinner and a couple of panels sections. So in this one, the junior structure has a transfer station, which allows a child who is in a mobility device, assuming that they can get out of that device, an opportunity to basically bum out of their chair onto the step, and then be able to maneuver without raising their feet any greater than a 6-inch rise. So with that has a transfer station going to a 3-foot deck with an elbow slide, a jungle net climber, steering wheel panel, and then at ground level play, we have a village play panel, which is a play piece, social play piece, and let me get it here so I can see it, a musical chime wave. The senior unit is purposely been designed so that it's mostly deckless. The only quote-unquote deck I have on this unit is a triangle so that there's an access point for a child to get onto the 6-foot slide up there. If you can switch over to the next one, please. Thank you. So those are the two, what we would call the traditional type structures, the ones that look like what you're used to seeing in a typical play space. So we do have a variety of climbers, a variety of ground level play, and slides with good access there. The next one, please. Just another angle. If you look in the lower left corner, that's a sensory play panel. It's a very large panel with a variety of play pieces for someone who is young to access, with a bunch of different devices on it, gears, little finger maze items where they can use for other sensories. And next to that is a spinner. If you can go back to the other slide, please. There, next to it looks like a little keyhole. That there is actually a spinning device, so a child can sit on it or stand on it, and it rotates. It's purposely on a bit of an angle so that your body weight allows it to spin versus being straight up, where it's pretty difficult to get that momentum. Okay, next one, please. Here too, you have the swing set with the 2 belts, a baby chair, and an inclusive chair for those that require it. That is positioned at the end there. If you notice in that render right there, there's a bit of a cement piece up at the front. Up at the top, rather. That would be the access that would be cut out of the wood border, allowing wheelchairs or mobility devices into the play space and onto the engineered wood fiber mulch surfacing. And the other item at the bottom of the page, you can see the rendering of a young girl there. It's orange with the 3 black circles. The face on that is actually a series of musical devices that operate by use of an electronic dynamo. So what you do is you spin the dynamo, and it gives it energy so that when the child touches it, it will create a musical sound. You'll also notice that it's a bit elevated. The idea for that is so that if I'm in a wheelchair, it's possible that I can get my knees under it, so I'm that much closer to it versus getting access to it by being sideways and trying to use it. I can actually use it properly. Any questions on that one?
Are there any questions or comments from the committee on this specific playground?
I have a question, please. It's Joanna Conrad speaking. I just wanted to ask, in terms of the flooring there, am I looking at it properly that it would be the mulch type flooring there?
You're asked for regarding the border?
No, so the park itself, like the actual floor. So I guess my question would be with respects to a young person, if they were in a wheelchair, how would they get from, let's say, one part of the little playground there to the component that you were just referring to, like the musical component? Because I know that, again, when it's like the mulch or the like little wooden chips, those are oftentimes really hard to navigate on, especially with a mobility device and or a wheelchair. And it looks like there's quite a bit of space there in between the different structures. So I just wanted to know what the flooring was and whether it would be something that a wheelchair could easily go over.
It is engineered wood mulch that was specified in the tender. Engineered wood fiber is a recognized surfacing for accessible projects. It does have its negatives. You know, you are correct in that if a heavy electric wheelchair is on it, it can create a bit of a rut in there, but it's designed in such a way that the wheelchair won't sink into it. It'll create a bit of a rut, but won't sink into it. I believe that you addressed earlier about the issue of using rubber as an alternative. It's just simply cost prohibitive. It didn't meet the budget. So I would say about 90% of projects in Ontario do use this engineered wood fiber. You asked about pieces being spread apart. The reason they're spread apart is that within the Canadian Standards Association, we have to keep a minimum of 6-foot clearance from each of the devices. The swing set actually takes a lot more space because when you're on it, you are on in an uncontrolled movement. So they add more surfacing and to those areas. So that's why there seems to be a big chunk of real estate between each piece.
Mm-hmm. Do we know how much more it would cost for a rubber flooring versus that the one that's being used? And I know that it's used quite a bit, and I know that it's recognized as being part of an accessible playground. But realistically speaking, for most kids who do have a wheelchair or a parent that's navigating a child in a wheelchair or mobility device, that flooring is not conducive for playing.
With, if I'm hearing your question correctly, you're asking how much more would rubber be?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you mind if I answer that? Okay. A project like this, you would be adding, and I'm really ballparking here, okay? It's about $25 a square foot for rubber, okay? You have just under 2,600 square feet. So you're adding, you're probably adding about 50,000 to the project for this one part.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Any other questions or comments regarding this playground?
Yeah. So I've been to my fair share of the park presentations throughout different counties and accessibility committees. And what stands out to me is that it always seems to be minimum standards. It's always minimum standards. Again, The rocks, no good. The rubber in the middle, the rubber pad would obviously be the best. Transfer stations, same thing. Transfer station means nothing to me. It's just a platform that a kid can climb on, that can pull himself up to. Where's the ramps? Why does every municipality have ramps except LaSalle? Like, put more ramps in the playgrounds.
I'm sorry,
Like,
part of it is I'm having a hard time hearing you.
I'm just making comment that there's no ramps included in these designs. And a lot of the accessible components are the minimum accessible components. It's never above and beyond, which is sort of the entire purpose of this committee. And we're not included on the planning portion of it. This is already approved. This is already done. It's just an explanation of what the minimum accessibility requirements are that you guys included, which is great, but it doesn't help anyone who has accessibility needs in the community.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're asking why are we not putting ramps on the equipment? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm just looking at,
Oh, okay.
Windsor, Amherstburg, other communities
Okay.
that have been successful in
Yeah,
doing major projects with ramps, which is the ideal accessible.
Easiest answer to that
navigating
would
these.
be because of budget and space limitations. A wheelchair ramp, typically you need 12 feet of length to go 1 foot of rise. So to have a child get onto a 3 foot high platform, we would need 36 feet of ramp plus rest areas every 12 feet. And so now we've probably at least tripled the size of the area using ramps, and we've probably made the project 4 times the price. The other problem is initially there were projects where they would have a ramp leading to a 12-inch high platform, have things for a child to do on that, and then you would have these stairs go up to the other equipment. Most of the industry sees that is almost like patronizing, because all those play items at the 12-inch high platform could be accessed at ground level. So the ground level play items would be those things that are on that 12-inch high platform. So I think I understand what you're saying. Unfortunately, these particular projects, because of where they are and the budget and the space, the idea of using ramps to get someone up to a certain height, it just wasn't in the cards. It just could not be done in the budget, nor could it have been done in the amount of space allotted.
And I think I understand that. And again, it's not a comment on the design portion, because I know that's sort of where your response, more of a comment on our municipal council, including us in on these planning and these budgeting for these things. Because again, I've been to these presentations in municipalities where it's very forward thinking and they are including these components and they are bringing it to council. And then I'm here and it seems like it's just too late. Like it's already been approved, right? So how are we supposed to advocate for these components? And space-wise, I know most of these parks. I'm just thinking of Natalie Park. That's right near the core of LaSalle. It could easily be expanded. There's lots of space there. And again, it's not really a design on your end. It's more of a municipal concern that we're just not dedicating the time, effort, and resources into these things that we should be. So I apologize for interrupting you. I don't think it's your fault. It's a little frustrating when I've heard the same presentation now for the last 8 years across a bunch of municipalities, and it just seems to just always be the same.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And you did bring up a good point that I will direct this to Mr. Beggs. For future considerations for playgrounds, can our committee be involved in the actual planning component, as well as just to get feedback from our committee on accessibility, different things that they want to see, different things that that we can work with within the budget, so that we can actually have our feedback, especially our committee, on things that they want to see and things that they feel that is important for accessibility for our future playgrounds as well.
Thank you for the question. Certainly we can. Part of what the Parks Master Plan that is coming up will include is some public consultation with committees, various committees from the town. And that is something that is coming online, I'm hoping throughout this year. So that would be an opportunity where we can get some bigger picture feedback of, you know, maybe there's some different levels of parks that the town of LaSalle should have. Maybe there is one location that should be, I don't want to say more accessible, but differently accessible. And those kind of ideas. I think that is the purpose of the Parks Master Plan and developing what the bigger picture of our parks should look like. And that is a piece that we haven't had in the past, and I think it's something that we need to improve on, as has just been brought up. However, for this project, you know, we are at a point where we've gone through the budget to get the money. We have held off on some parks replacements because we've been throwing around the ideas of the Parks Master Plan for a number of years, and there's been a bit of a backlog on some of the parks, and we do want to move forward with getting some of these playgrounds replaced that need replacement. So I think that's the bigger picture of how it should go, and I think that would lead into some discussion on what is the annual process of parks that are going in, and how should the different committees be involved. So I think, I don't want to say, yes, for sure it will be this or that today, but that is something that needs to be discussed and sorted out for the future going forward.
Councilor Burns?
Yeah. Just to your point about the budget, I mean, I've been on council since 1991, on and off. The park allotment that we get is either land or in lieu of, if we're not building a park there, is $750 a lot. So in order to build these types of structures that we need today, it's certainly not enough money. And it takes a long time for us to put this amount of money away to do this. And to your point, I think, and to Mr. Begg's point, we need to maybe have a premier area park that it would be maybe at the Vollmer that is a 100% accessible and usable, with facilities there like washrooms that we can be using that we won't find in any other park. And hopefully the master plan, I believe, is coming in the next year or so. And we can address that at that time with ourselves. So in a perfect world, we would have all that. And anybody that's had any disabilities and had to deal with them, whether it's eyes or wheelchairs or whatever, well, I think it's now time that we look at that and go to the next step. But we can't blame the process that we've gone through. This is the first that Anita and I have seen this as well. I've never seen this before. So we may not have followed the right process, but we certainly will work on that. And thank you for your input.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Wendell, you can continue on.
Do you want to
with
go to
your
the next one then?
Yes, sure.
And, okay, one more. And one more. I think we're done with that park. These are just different angles of the same project. So you can see where the placement of things. And one more. And, okay, next slide. So this park here is Lafferty Park. And here too, the initial items that I talked about with the Canadian Standards Association, Annex H, things like that, apply to all of the projects here. And in order to satisfy, again, the needs placed that within the RFP that we were given to work from. Again, these space limitations, budget limitations, we hereto came with a project that would have the junior unit have the traditional transfer station leading up to a slide. The senior unit would be, for all intents and purposes, called deckless, and then some ground level play. So this project here, that blacked out area along the bottom, that too is the notched out area that would be providing access into the pit for those with mobility devices. We have the swing set here too, with the 2 belts, a baby chair, and the inclusive. If you want to switch to the next slide. The equipment itself, you have the junior structure that's right there with a double slide. That little panel on the side was developed actually with the Toronto District School Board. They wanted something that was like a bubble panel, but not a bubble panel because they break, so that children would be able to have opportunities for seeing through things. So it's we developed this. It's just called an ICU panel, and it just had like a peekaboo panel on there. Shade on that as well by means of a metal perforated roof, and ground level play. That little piece that's sticking out is a gear panel that just a gear add-on panel that can be accessed from ground level and from a wheelchair. Off to the side, it's kind of hard to see on up there, but there too has one of those spinners from the previous project. And if you can go to the next one, please. Just a different angle. The senior area has a 6-foot slide, ladder access, and a trapeze arc for upper body. And I believe that's the last of the Lafferty angles. If you want to go to the next one, please. So there we go. There's everything within there. There's a secondary access up to the 3-foot slide with that jungle neck climber. So there's a primary and an secondary access for the younger children. And next slide. So that was for Lafferty. Was there any questions on that one?
Any comments or questions from the committee? Okay, go.
I don't see an access for a wheelchair pad like you had in the last
Yes,
one.
if you go
Is it
back,
missing,
please.
or is it on this slide? But on the colored pictures, I don't see it.
Yeah, back one more.
Or maybe I missed it.
Back one more. And one more. It didn't come out in the renderings
Okay.
just because of the angle.
But it is
that
there,
blacked out area near the scale.
Okay.
That is the area that's notched out of the wood border, that when the installers are there, they'll be working with Mr. Bryden's crew to fine tune exact placement to your pathway. So that's correct.
Paul, can I just add a piece to that?
Okay.
Paul, I'll just add a point to that. Each of the playgrounds, it's shown where the notch out will be, and then our crew will also add in a hardscape pathway that would connect to a sidewalk or an access point. So it's not just the cutout onto grass. It'll be an actual pathway over to a nearby sidewalk or something nearby. So each park has that.
Thank you.
Just one more comment on this. Just Mr. Burns' one comment about in the Parks Master Plan kind of coming up with a premier park and then maybe a level 2 or a level 3. So this loosely has that idea, and like the one that we just looked at, Lafferty, the budget of this one is kind of similar to River Villa, a little bit more. So these are small park playgrounds. So I mean, even when you're looking at the picture, you can tell it's more simple, it's smaller, less expensive, but it is because the park is smaller, and the unit is going to be smaller, and we can't put a premier playground in every location. So we've sort of started that idea of there are kind of different levels, and we sort of loosely have like an A, B, and a C, and these would definitely be in that C category as the smallest and the least expensive. And it's that idea that not every park can be the premier park in LaSalle.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, so Mr. Wendell, you can go on to the next.
If you can forward to the next black and white. There we go, back one. There we go. So this one here is Mayo Park. And here too, same as what I said previously regarding the CSA and Annex H for accessibility. Trying to get you as much play value within the space as possible that is going to actually be used, like things that are proven winners. Here you can see that blacked out area on the site plan that is just off from the swing as the access. That proved to be the most logical place to put the access based on the placement of the pit within the park and logical access into the play space. If you notice those dotted lines around the equipment, that's that surfacing zone. That's the play zone that's required under the Canadian Standards Association. I don't like putting access points where you're walked right into that. The other is it's just a good practice not to have that if we moved it over to the right where a child is walking into the no encroachment zone if we don't need to for the swing. Because again, on a swing, a child's using it, they have no way of stopping if somebody is walking in front of their path. So by getting it out of that area makes a lot of sense. So that's why the placement of that was there. This project, like the others, we have the junior structure as a traditional play with the transfer station. Here we have a split deck, so a child's going up to a 3-foot high deck, then it splits to 3.5 feet. Then there's a step going to 3.5 feet. Then you're going up to the 4-foot triangle deck where the slide is. And then we have different play pieces on and at ground level. The senior area was purposely made as a deckless piece as per the RFP requirement. And in doing so, we have an awful lot of variety in sliding, climbing, crawling, upper body play. Here too, we have a spinner and the swing set and a musical play wall. If you want to go to the next slide, please. So here's one of the angles of the project. This is the junior structure that has the 4-foot high slide, the transfer stairs going up. You can see the climber off to the one side. That panel that you see next to the slide is a reach panel so that a child, whether they be seated in a wheelchair or standing, they're more ambulatory, they can be jumping. It's a bit of a contest to see how far can you reach or jump up to. The little thing that looks like a yurt next to that is a net climber. The cable inside of that is a braided metal that is then wrapped with a polyamide yarn, which has been proven for, oh goodness, almost 50 years now as being the best product for use in this environment. Next slide. That's primarily the senior structure angle, where you have the slide, the upper body pieces below, items at ground level play that the children can use for balance and crawling and upper body. You can't really see it there, but next slide, please. Just trying to see if we can find an angle that shows it, but there is also on the senior play, we have that upper body, the double trapeze, but there's also an accessible trapeze beam, so that if I'm in a wheelchair, I can get under it, and assuming I have my upper body abilities, I can be using it for upper body exercising. This has a very wide variety of different play experiences. That black belt material it sways back and forth, so a child could stand on it or sit on it and just sway or lay on it and sway like a hammock. It's the same spinner as the other parks, except it's a little bit taller. It's the stand-up spinner instead of the sit-down spinner. You can see the panel off to the one side, to the left. Those are mini panels. There too, they're designed so that someone in a wheelchair can access it and put their knees under it, so that they're not using it sideways. Next panel, or next, yeah, thank you. Again, the swing, 2 belts, a baby chair, the accessible seat. There's another play panel series off to the ones up at the top end that is musical sound devices. So that there's a if you can go back one, please. There we go. You're seeing the back end of it, but you can see at the panels at the lower end of the render there. The one that's small, the mini panel, that little black thing is actually like a cylinder, and it has a series of plastic balls and whatnot inside of it. So when you spin it, it sounds like a rainmaker. The other panel off to the side is a what's called a melody sound player. It's like a chime. And okay, next panel. And then next one, please. That's just a top-down view of the project where you can see just how the play is spread out. What I like to do in projects where possible is make it so that we don't create any bottlenecks where the children are going to be forced into one area. They can spread out the play. It's a bit of a paradox, because when you're dealing with younger children, they like to be compacted, where when they're older, they're just more moving around more, and there's more inclined to knock into somebody. So we spread that out. And I believe that's the last panel. Okay. And same project, just again, aerial view, drone view. And any questions on that project?
Any questions or comments from the committee?
I just have one comment. It would be nice when you were looking for accessibility to see a wheelchair under one of these pieces. Maybe I'm a little bit anal, but from a visual, I like what you have laid out, but if one of these slides with a person in a wheelchair actually using it would be something for future presentation. Just a thought.
We actually do have those. Okay. When the earlier gentleman was talking about having a ramped structure,
right.
Render, there's the wheelchair on the unit, but in these units here, these projects, the wheelchair would not be able to get up there, and once they did, they wouldn't be able to move. So
I'm thinking when you say upper body strength.
Yes.
So I'm trying to visualize the equipment and how really accessible it is, like 3 feet and under or 4 feet and over. I just don't have that vision.
Can you go, is it possible to go back to, I want to see if there's, go back one more. I just want to see if there's a way that, actually there, it doesn't come out that well in the render because it's being broadcast like this, but you can see that little, what we call a boogie board, that black pad, and then next to it, there's an orange device. That orange device is what I was talking about, that a wheelchair can get under. There's plenty of room for that wheelchair to maneuver to it and use that. But duly noted, that's a good idea to actually show a person in a wheelchair using it.
Are there any comments, any other comments or questions?
I'd just like to make a comment, but more so to the committee, just in terms of exploring future planning. And I know that this was brought up already, that it would be made a point for future reference for us to be part of the planning process. But this is something that actually inspired me to want to be a part of this committee to begin with. Just with respects to future or past conversations that have been generated over parks, specifically in LaSalle, that were being put up, and the term accessibility and what that actually means. Because, you know, as we're looking at these playgrounds, again, I mean, they look great. So it's nothing against the actual design. My point is more so that it would be really nice for this committee to be actually part of the planning and or design process, but to also actually have some input from kids who are actually in mobility or use mobility devices or have a wheelchair, because many children that I know, whether they have limited mobility because they have an issue with walking, low muscle tone, for example, like somebody with Down syndrome, or for example, somebody in a wheelchair and or a walker, they would have a very hard time navigating the wood fiber. But also, you know, some of the playground equipment that's being referred to as being great for upper body, truthfully, I don't know how many kids could actually utilize that, especially because many of them don't have the upper body strength to be able to pull themselves up. Or even, for example, some of the slides that I'm looking at, they don't even have a ramp or an opportunity for a parent or a caretaker to push a child up if they were in some sort of a mobility device to get them up on top of the slide. So, I mean, everything is great in theory, but in practice, it's not actually that accessible. And, you know, it's heartbreaking when you go to a quote unquote accessible park and you see children who can't actually utilize all of the equipment and or more than, you know, 5 to 10% of it, truthfully speaking, right? And at the end of the day, that's what the parks are all about, is to bring inclusion and to bring children together and for them to find commonalities to be able to play together. And it's just sad when we are actually not striving to do that. And, you know, in addition to that, I think it might be useful to consider, instead of doing like these smaller little parks in these little, you know, niche areas, why not put the funds together to create one or two superior or whatever they're called, premier parks instead, right? Instead of having the class B and C, maybe we have just a couple class A. As a parent of a child who has a disability, I am more than happy to travel to a destination that I know will be accessible to my child versus having one in my backyard that's just not going to be useful whatsoever. And if we're really looking at parks and trying to make them inclusive, especially in our community, like I said, I mean, I think that it'd be really nice to have the voices of other people that are involved in the planning process. And again, this isn't anything against Mark Jones or Henderson in terms of their design or their planning. I mean, it's all said and done. And so like just as Mike had recently mentioned that, I mean, at this point, we're just kind of listening and saying, yeah, this is great, which is fine. But going forward, I think that we need to have more of a say in terms of, you know, what's actually being done and how it's being planned, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna, for your comments, and I agree with them all. And our Linda, Jean had just stated that we will be doing that going forward. So both yours and Mike's and the committee's comments have been heard, and we will be part of the planning process going forward. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Wendell, for your presentation. Okay, so there's a recommendation before us that the report of the manager of roads and parks dated February 29, 2024, PWAC 2024-1 regarding the construction of playground equipment in 2024 be received. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councilor Burns and Cynthia? Okay, thank you. E, question statements from members of the committee. Okay, I do have one. Do we take advantage of any grants that are available for accessibility inclusiveness? The reason why I ask is at one of my past jobs, I received a large amount for an accessibility playground from the government, and it paid for a beautiful rubber construction, and it's an accessible playground that is very well used in Windsor. So I'm just wondering if we've either secured any grants or if we've explored any of those options.
Thank you for the question. We certainly have had grants in the past, and we continue to always look for them and try to get them. A couple of years ago, we had one where we were able to do some modifications to some existing playgrounds and take the old pea stone base out and install some engineered wood fiber, which I think we all understand it's not as good as rubber, but it is a lot better than pea stone. So that was something that we have done in the past, and we're always looking for grants. So currently, I don't believe we have anything specifically, but there's always new ones coming out, and our finance department is always looking and letting us know when there are grants.
Are there any other
Funding in
questions?
general. Are there any other agencies that we could approach? I know in Chatham-Kent, I think recently we approached, it's called 100 Women Who Care or something like that, but they're going to be integral in actually helping us fundraise to improve the accessibility components of playgrounds. And I know of other municipalities that have, I can't remember if it was a Wheatley or Blenheim, that they have a fully rubber pad accessible park for a tiny community, and they were able to do a ton of fundraising in order to achieve that. So are there any other options for fundraising for these?
I guess the honest answer is that at the time of this meeting, I don't really know if there is anything specifically. I'm sure there are groups, there's different organizations that donate money all the time to projects. For instance, the Rotary Club has donated money for several projects in the town, things like that. So that's certainly avenues we can look into. I did also just want to point out, just mentioned a rubber play surface. At the time when the Vollmer Complex playground splash pad was built, that playground was built with a rubber play base, and the high cost that came with that. It is one of our premier parks. Now I know it also doesn't have ramping specifically, and that's something maybe when we do look at that parks master plan, as we had mentioned, I think that might be a component that this committee could really advocate for, is that there maybe is one park in LaSalle that is the top-notch accessible park, and that could be a big piece of the plan. Another comment there that maybe we don't need to have some of the small parks and sort of pool the money together to have the one big park that is great. In the past, we have actually looked at those options, and we were almost going to move forward with actually eliminating some park areas. So just in the big picture, the appetite to remove playground equipment from a specific location is not there from what we've seen, and maybe that's part of what would come out of the Parks Master Plan. But St. Clair Park, for example, was slated at one time to be removed and not have a playground anymore. And when we moved forward with potentially not replacing it, we had a lot of comments, negative comments of, why are we not replacing it? So those are some of the things that hopefully the Parks Master Plan can flush out. And like many things, it's we try to provide as much as we can for the money that we have, and that's where we end up with somewhere in the middle.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments?
Chair, is this a good time to make a motion that this committee be involved with the master plan as well as any planning for future parks. So we can forward that to council. If somebody seconds that, then I'll speak to it. And I just leave that open. Can I get a seconder for that motion? Thank you.
I would second that, Joanna Conrad.
Yeah, because I think it's important that we send it to both to council and administration. We want to be involved. And then I don't believe Anita and I saw this until this particular point. I didn't. I'll speak for myself. I think administration did a good job, but with our input, I think we can do better. And so thank you for the support, and I think that your input is important on that as well, so thank you.
Mr. Burns, can you please outline exactly what your motion is, please?
The motion would be to have this committee involved with the planning of parks and be part of the master plan upcoming for the town of LaSalle. And that be forwarded to council as a motion.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, then we will move on to F. So our next meeting date is scheduled to be held on Wednesday, May 15th, 2024 at 3:30 p.m. So just wanted to take a moment to thank everybody for attending, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Have a great day.
Yeah, you try to pull a Nate Road Park. You'll get crucified.